Hey, it's Dave from Split. Last week we introduced the idea of progressive delivery, and we said it would be a two-part series. Progressive delivery emerged because teams wanted to ship faster in smaller increments, and that meant they were going to have a higher cadence, and they wanted to do that safely and ideally learn something in the process. So today we're talking about shades of progressive delivery. We won't have time to talk about 50 shades of progressive delivery, but I think we'll create some distinctions so you can understand how to look at progressive delivery and understand where you're at and where you might emerge to. Let's lay the foundation with 3 goals that you might want to accomplish with progressive delivery, right? The first one is to avoid downtime, whether that be planned downtime, which would be like a maintenance interval, or whether it be unplanned downtime, like an epic fail upon trying to go live. Now, the second one is how do I get an early glimpse of how it's going so that I can, limit the blast radius? How can I get an early idea of how this release is going before I affect all my users? The third thing is how much can I learn during the process? Can I actually use this progressive delivery to learn something about my users and or my infrastructure as I'm going through the process, right? So that's 1, 2, and 3, right? We want to avoid downtime. We want to, how can I kind of gradually roll out and be able to back away if there's a problem before I hurt everybody? And how can I learn in the process? So let's start with blue-green deployments. And blue-green deployment really nails the first one, which is how do I avoid downtime? And the way it does that is that you have your production running on blue. So you've got your blue up and running, and then you stand up a green, which is a copy of your production infrastructure, and you take your time to install the release on that, do your smoke test, make sure everything is cool, and then when you believe you're ready, you do a clean cutover from blue to green. If you missed something in your testing and when you go to green you end up with problems, reverting is really easy. You just switch back to blue. Okay? If things go well, you stay on green and then you sort of recycle the environments, and blue is going to become the next staging area. That's blue-green. Remember, in that case, you are still doing a big bang on 2 fronts. One is you're going live all at once for everybody, and number 2, you're taking the entire release live. So let's move on to the second example we want to look at, which is Canary deployments or Canary Releases. Now in a Canary, you've got your infrastructure up. Let's say there's 100 servers, and you want to try out your new release on just, say, 2 of the servers and send 1 or 2% of your population there, right? So you have to have some logic somewhere that figures out how to route those users and whether they need to be sticky connections, and they probably do. But you route some of your traffic to these canaries, and you can pay super close attention to how those servers are doing and whether there's errors and all that good stuff, right? And if anything goes wrong, we just drain the traffic from whatever's sending the traffic to those canaries back to production, and you're back the way you were at 100% production. So this is kind of still big bang, not big bang in terms of all at once, everybody getting everything at the same time, but it's the whole release, right? So the unit of measure is kind of the entire release as a chunk. So let's segue on to the first big leap of change, which I think is really why the progressive delivery term emerged, which was when people started using feature flags to roll out features and use that to essentially do Canary, to slowly expose something to users and see how it's going, right? So with feature flag, you deploy the code with the new features turned off, and then you might expose the code just to internal people for a final smoke test on production. And then you might dog food it, you might expose it to your employees only, again on production. And if things are still going well, you then start ratcheting it up through your actual user population. And this gives you the chance to expose it to 5 and 10 and 15 or 20 or whatever percent of users as you go, and to be able to see how it's going. With feature flags, reverting is really quite simple. You just ratchet back that setting, right? So if you had it out to your actual users, say 10% of your real users, and you find some issues you find kind of weird, so you might ratchet it back just to dog fooding or even just back to the dev team. So you're still on production, but you're not exposing it to your customers. Now we're not dealing with the whole release as a blob, right? We have individual features that we can toggle, and that's really important because it's pretty rare that you're only taking one thing live in a deployment. So let's say you take 5 things live in your deployment. Only one of them has a problem. Well, with a Canary or with blue-green, you'd basically, the other 4 have to go back too. So the ones that are fine kind of go back and wait for another chance, right? But with feature flags, you can actually roll the 4 good ones out while you're rolling back the 5th one to figure it out. And I wrote a blog post, which I'll link to, about the difference between Canary deployments and feature flag rollouts. Really, the bottom line there is there's a quality of life difference. If 5 teams are taking something live tonight and 1 team has a bug and the other 4 can't take their stuff live, it's a bummer. You don't want to be that 5th team, and you don't want to be the 4 teams that have to wait. It's great to have that kind of fine-grained control. Okay, so the final model I want to talk about is a feature delivery platform, which you use to manage, monitor, and experiment with features as you're rolling them out. to learn more about this model, you can look into what Microsoft done with EXP, their internal platform, LinkedIn, Booking.com, Walmart. They all have platforms they built for controlling rollouts and watching how they go. And they have different levels of business rules around when they can go all the way to 100% of their users. The basic idea is that you want to be able to monitor how it's going as it's going. And there may be times where you actually want to experiment and deliberately watch 2 different cohorts or more and see if their behavior has changed as you intend by the release. And at some of these shops, you can't actually go all the way to all the users until you prove that A, you've done no harm, and B, you've actually accomplished some kind of a goal you were setting out to with the release in the first place. And it's a bummer to have to roll back, but it's actually great to have the detailed information about what happened and to be able to iterate in an informed way and try again. On the wall behind me is a graphic that brings us to life, right? So you've got users coming along here, and they're switched by a feature flag. And you'll notice that, in this case, 10% going up to that new feature in the blue box there, and 90% are going around. And we talked about this in another video, but I want to kind of bring this up in this example, which is this is an example of a platform where you're switching users to see where they go, and then you're tracking what happens, and then you can actually measure the outcomes. And this sort of holistic approach is what lets you move much faster with greater safety. So those are the things I wanted to talk about with progressive delivery. I hope that's helpful, the different distinctions. These can be mixed up together. You might use blue-green to take the deployment into production while having feature flags with turning off the new stuff and then ratchet it up. Same thing with Canary. You could use the Canary to actually get the code into production with the new features turned off, and then use feature flags to ramp them up. And you might just have feature flags and kind of wing it and watch what's happening, or you might have a full-blown feature delivery platform helping you kind of built-in ability to watch what's happening. Have a great day. Talk to you soon.